Building confidence is less about trying to fix yourself and become better, and more about believing that you are already capable just as you are. If that idea resonates with you, I am so excited to teach you about two different methods of building confidence. There's what I call the fixing method and the expansion method. Spoiler, one of them works really well, and one of them isn't super effective. And in today's episode, I'm going to teach you all of the context behind that and explain why. If you're new here, welcome to the Art of Speaking Up podcast. I'm Jessica Guzik, a former McKinsey consultant and a New York Times featured podcast host. And I am here to help you build deep confidence and communicate fearlessly at work so you can feel unstoppable as a leader. So I want to start by teaching you the definition of what I call the fixing method of building confidence. This is the approach that doesn't work, but the reason that I'm teaching it is because it's a super common pattern that we all unintentionally fall into. And when you understand what it looks like, you'll get better at catching yourself in this pattern and pulling yourself out of it. So the fixing method of building confidence is when you have the thought process of, something is wrong with me. I'm broken. I'm not good enough. I'm not as good or as smart as other people. Let me build confidence so that I can fix myself. If I can become confident, then I will be good enough and I will be smart and capable just like other people. At the core of this approach is the idea that the confidence will kind of like cover up or transform or transmute your perceived flaws and deficiencies. A telltale sign that you are using the fixing method of building confidence is if you set really high, almost borderline perfectionist standards for yourself. So here are some examples of thoughts that indicate that you are in this fixing method of building confidence. If you have thoughts like, I need to express myself perfectly. I need to have the perfect talking points for my presentation. I have to be prepared for every single question that I could possibly get asked. Any expectation that requires you to perform at 100% perfection or have all the answers or show up perfectly or be the expert is a telltale sign that you're in the fixing method of building confidence. Let me explain why. With the fixing method of building confidence, you have this idea that you're broken and something's wrong with you and like you're stuck down here and you're trying to like elevate yourself and move up and become better. And in your mind, there's this huge gap between where you are now with all your problems and struggles and deficiencies and that confident, powerful place that you want to be. And because you think that that gap is huge and you have such a long way to go before you can be good enough and feel confident, you set these really high standards, which makes sense, right? If you've got a huge gap that you think you need to fill, you're going to set very high expectations to try to fill that gap. Now, what happens when we set really high expectations for ourselves is we usually end up sabotaging the progress that we wanted to make. There are a couple of reasons. Number one, high standards create enormous amounts of pressure. So when you tell yourself, I have to get it perfect, I have to be a subject matter expert in every meeting, I have to know the answer to every question, you feel stressed and anxious and almost like constricted, like something is choking you. That pressure can feel debilitating. And when you're under pressure, it's really hard to perform well. It's really hard to give it your best in the meeting or in the conversation. So you end up not doing well. And the irony is the reason you didn't do well in the conversation is because you expected yourself to do so well. And you set an expectation that was psychologically overwhelming and debilitating. But there's another reason that these high perfectionist standards sabotage us, and it's because even in the instances where you do a good job and you perform really well, it becomes impossible for you to really see that and recognize that because you're never quite hitting that perfection standard that you'd hoped for. So for example, maybe you led a meeting and it went so well and you nailed it, but you can't stop thinking about one moment in the meeting where you awkwardly fumbled a word and sounded a little bit weird. And you walk away from that meeting feeling like you failed, even though you did an amazing job. Or maybe you give a presentation and you nail the presentation, and then you get asked a question at the end that you don't have a prepared answer for, and you leave the presentation just thinking about that one question. When we set these high perfectionist standards, it becomes really hard for us to really see all the places where we are doing a good job and where we are showing up well. And so when you're in this fixing method of building confidence, it becomes a lose-lose situation. You either don't perform the way that you'd hoped and you beat yourself up and get down on yourself over that, or you do perform well, but you can't even see it because your standards are so high that you're not even registering that progress as a win. I see this with my clients all the time when I first start working with them. It's so hard for them to acknowledge a win and acknowledge their progress unless everything went 100% perfectly. And I'm sure you can see how this would get in the way of building confidence. If you perpetually feel like you're failing and you're falling short, no matter how effectively you perform, your confidence is going to feel stifled. You're really going to struggle to feel like you're growing and making progress. And this fixing method of building confidence can get us stuck in a really psychologically painful cycle. The cycle starts with you feeling like you aren't good enough. So you set those really high standards. And then when you don't meet those high standards, you return back to the feeling of not being good enough. And so then you make the standards even higher. They get higher and higher, more and more impossible to meet. And the feeling of not being good enough intensifies and deepens over time. Now, luckily, this is a normal thing that a lot of people do, so there's truly no shame in this. This is a pattern that I've been working through for most of my life, and it's still a day-to-day practice for me to remember to leave it behind and pivot to a much more effective method of building confidence, which is what I call the expansion method. This method not only feels better psychologically, but it's far more effective. So the expansion method of building confidence is when you have the thought that you are smart and you are capable and you really have something meaningful to offer to the world. And the reason that you want to build confidence is so that you can expand your ability to share those talents and share those gifts and that leadership with the world around you. So even though with both methods you're building confidence, the fixing method versus the expansion method are coming from fundamentally different beliefs. With the fixing method, the belief is something is wrong with me and confidence is going to fix me. And with the expansion method, the belief is something is right with me. I've got lots to offer, and growing my confidence is going to expand my ability to amplify my voice and my contribution. So it's called the expansion method because you're trying to expand the impact that you already know you're capable of having in the world and in the workplace. At its core, the expansion method stems from having a very self-respecting and self-compassionate relationship with yourself. You like the person who you are, you respect the person who you are, and therefore you don't feel this impulse to cover yourself up or change yourself. You feel an impulse to make yourself bigger in the world and make yourself more powerful. Now, unlike with the fixing method, when you're using the expansion method, you don't have this insane pressure and perfectionism. And the reason is because when you're in that fixing approach, you have high standards because you feel like you're super broken and deficient, and you have this huge, long way to go before you can be good enough and confident. And so you set these enormously high standards. But with the expansion approach, you don't believe that something is wrong with you. You believe that something is right with you. So there's no pressure for you to have to take these enormous leaps, which means that when you set goals and expectations for how you want to show up at work and how you want to challenge yourself to be more confident in the room, you tend to set expectations that are more attainable and less stressful. So instead of thinking to yourself, I have to get every word right and perfect when I speak, you might think to yourself, when I share my idea, I want to share it with conviction. I really want to back my own idea. Or instead of thinking to yourself, I have to make sure I have a perfectly prepared answer to any question I might get asked during this presentation, you might think to yourself, I want to make sure I have really powerful answers to the biggest question, and I want to do my best to respond powerfully, even if I get asked a question that I haven't prepared an answer for. And because these goals are more attainable, you feel less pressure, so you can perform better, and you can actually attain the goals because the goals are attainable. So the expansion method leads you down a pathway where your confidence reliably grows. You set a goal that you can reach, you reach the goal, and then you feel stronger and better about yourself, and then you go and figure out what you want your next goal to be. The analogy that comes to mind for me when it comes to the fixing approach versus the expansion approach is I think about it like a first grader. If you took a first grader and then you put them in a classroom where they were being taught 7th grade level material, it would crush their confidence. They would feel so stressed out, they wouldn't be able to keep up because there's a mismatch in what they're being asked to do. But if you take that same first grader and you put them in an enriching first grade environment, their confidence is going to grow because the expectations that are being set are ones that they can reach. And I know this sounds so obvious, right? Like, of course, you don't want to put a first grader in a 7th grade classroom, but we high achievers do this to ourselves so often when it comes to building confidence. Instead of putting ourselves in the proverbial classroom that makes sense for where we're at, we set these insane expectations that we can't meet, and we end up feeling stressed out and discouraged. And you would never look at a first grader and say, oh my gosh, you weren't able to get an A in the 7th grade classroom? What is wrong with you? How are you so stupid? And yet, us high achievers, we often do that to ourselves, right? Like, we set this high standard that doesn't make sense. We set these high expectations, and then you don't meet them and you beat yourself up. But it was the expectations that were the problem. You're not the problem. It was just the expectations that were the problem. It was the method that was the problem. The fixing method of building confidence doesn't set you up for success, but the expansion method of building confidence does. Now, at this point, my guess is, or my hope is, that you're thinking, okay, this expansion method sounds way better. How do I do it? And I'm glad you asked, because that's what we're going to talk about. The expansion method is my preferred method of building confidence. When I am working with my clients, this is the method that I am using to guide them in their confidence building process. And I want to teach you a foundational tool that will help you make this pivot from the fixing method to the expansion method. I call this tool the 2-stage filter. Anytime you make a decision about how you want to show up in the room or how you're going to attempt to be confident, instead of passing that through one filter, you're going to pass it through 2 filters. So let me explain what I mean. Let's say you say to yourself, I want to be and feel confident leading this meeting. So I'm going to make sure that I've scripted every single thing that I'm going to say, that I've thought about everything that can go wrong in the room, and that I've prepared for any question that can pop up or anything that can happen. Now, usually, the filter that we have in our minds when we're having those types of thoughts is this going to help me feel confident? And when you have that thought of how you want to prepare for the meeting and how you want to show up confident, usually the answer is yes, right? Like, you decide that you're going to do all that prep and set all those intentions because you believe that that will help you feel confident. Now, instead of just that one filter of, will this help me feel confident? I want you to use 2 filters. you will first ask yourself, will this help me feel confident? But then you will also ask yourself, does this help me cultivate a healthy relationship with myself? So I want to run some examples through these filters because the examples are going to help you really understand why these filters are so effective. First, I'm going to share examples of patterns that my clients sometimes get stuck in that don't pass the 2-filter test. So these are thoughts or intentions that someone believes will help them feel more confident, but they only pass that first filter and they fail at the second filter of, will this help me cultivate a healthy relationship with myself? So here are some examples. The first example is, I should know everything, right? Like I should be a subject matter expert no matter what room I'm in. Filter number 1, will this help you feel confident? Yeah, for sure. If you always know everything, of course you will feel confident. But filter number 2, will this help you cultivate a healthy relationship with yourself? No, there's an enormous amount of pressure that comes with that expectation. There's also this implicit assumption that you can't trust yourself to be resourceful and speak up in the room, even if you're not an expert. So this example fails the second filter. Let's look at another one. The next one is, when I speak, I want every word to come out of my mouth perfectly. Now, would it help you feel confident if every word came out of your mouth perfectly? Of course, that feels amazing. We all want that, right? But does expecting yourself to get every word perfect help you cultivate a healthy relationship with yourself? Probably not. It doesn't really allow you much room to be human, to have normal human flaws and imperfections. It really makes you feel like what you're saying is only good enough and it only counts if every single component of it is perfect. Let's look at one more example. This is a really common one that comes up, and it's the thought of, I should never feel nervous. I should always feel confident and ready. Now, would it help you feel more confident if you never felt nervous and if you always walked into the room feeling exactly how you want to feel? Of course, that would help you feel more confident. But does it help you cultivate a healthy relationship with yourself to expect that you will always feel exactly the way that you want to feel? Not really, because it doesn't really allow room for your individual human experience and for some of the very normal and very expected emotions that can come up when you're challenging yourself or speaking up or allowing your voice to be heard in a situation that you're still getting comfortable with. So in all of these situations, you can see that the standard or the expectation is one that if you can achieve it, you probably would feel really confident. But the standard itself doesn't really allow you to have a healthy relationship with yourself. These standards put a lot of pressure on you, and they also have you feeling like you're only doing well and your contribution and your performance only counts when it's absolutely perfect. And when I say perfect, I mean perfect beyond a point of human possibility, like perfect in a way that no human could ever accomplish. Now, I want to contrast this with some examples that pass both of the filters. So they pass through the filter of, will this help me feel confident? But they also pass through the filter of, will this help me cultivate a healthy relationship with myself? So the first example is, instead of trying to know everything that's discussed, I will do my best to use what I do know to participate in the conversation. Now, would it help you feel confident if you participated in the conversation, even though you didn't know everything? Yeah, for sure. You'd feel awesome about yourself, right? Like you'd probably feel like a badass. Does it help you cultivate a healthy relationship with yourself when you expect that you will participate even if you don't know everything? Yes, 100%. That's an empowering relationship with yourself. Instead of putting all this pressure on yourself to have all the answers and know everything, which isn't possible, you trust that your smarts and your resourcefulness and your leadership will help you make an impact in the room, whether you're a subject matter expert or not. Let's look at another example. The next one is, Instead of me getting every word perfect, I want to speak with conviction and impact. I really want to back my own ideas and own my own belief in my suggestions and the words that I'm sharing. Now, would it make you feel confident to back your suggestions and own your ideas, even if you don't get the words 100% perfectly? Absolutely, right? That would make you feel even more confident. Like, it takes such a badass to back your ideas and show up strong, even if your words aren't 100% perfect. I guarantee you that will have you feeling more powerful than you would feel if you got the words 100% perfect. And does that goal help you cultivate a healthy relationship with yourself? Absolutely, because it's not about you performing this unattainable standard of perfection. It's about you showing up strong, and expecting yourself to show up strong and wanting to show up strong is a healthy expectation that makes you feel good about yourself. Let's look at one last example. This is the example of I want to give it my all and give it everything I have in the moment, even if I feel nervous and even if I don't feel 100% emotionally ready. Now, is this going to make you feel confident? Yes. If you learn to show up strong in the moment and give it 100% of what you have, even when you don't feel emotionally ready or emotionally perfect in that moment, you will walk away feeling like such a badass because you will know I don't need to feel perfect or ready to feel like I nailed it. That is one of the most empowering feelings you could possibly have. And does it help you cultivate a healthy relationship with yourself when you tell yourself that your goal isn't to feel ready or perfect, but simply to give it everything you've got in the moment? Heck yes, that strengthens your relationship with yourself, because in that expectation, what you're telling yourself is, hey, I believe I'm strong. Like, I believe I'm resilient. I'm not so fragile that the moment things get hard, I can't handle it. I am strong enough to ride those waves and show up effectively, even when conditions aren't 100% ideal. That is one of the most powerful ways to solidify your relationship with yourself. Now, my hope with this episode is that you feel how the expansion method is such a win-win. With the expansion method, not only do you feel better about yourself because those goals are attainable and you're treating yourself in a healthy, empowered way, but also you set yourself up for success. You set goals and intentions that are smart and strategic and that are actually going to help you move towards the confidence that you are wanting to build. One of my favorite things about my client work is when I help them build confidence using the expansion method, I get to watch what it's like for them to start to treat themselves in a healthy way and offer themselves tons of self-compassion and tons of empowerment as they're working on their confidence. As women, we are so used to making sure that other people feel empowered and other people feel supported. We're always constantly pouring that emotional labor and that love and that kindness and that empowerment into the people around us and making sure that they feel strong and amazing. And we deserve that so much for ourselves, and we sometimes forget to offer it to ourselves. And with the expansion method of building confidence, confidence building stops being a punishment. It stops being this punishing standard that you use to beat yourself up, and instead it transforms into a vehicle where you can deepen your self-respect and your self-compassion while building the confidence and while becoming internally stronger. So it's truly the best of both worlds, and I really believe it's what women deserve. We don't need more self-help and more confidence-building tips that are telling us to fix ourselves and change and show up different. We need more permission to believe that we're already capable and to prioritize treating ourselves with grace and with an impeccably high standard, because that is what we deserve. The expansion method offers us that, and that's why I get so excited about it. Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode. And If the expansion method resonated with you and you want to build confidence, but you don't want to do it in this harsh, punishing way, you really want to have that healthy, self-compassionate relationship with yourself as you build the confidence, this is the work that I do with my clients inside of the Art of Speaking Up Academy. This is my signature program where I help you build real, authentic self-confidence, and I help you develop your voice and your executive presence as a leader. When you have the inner confidence and those outer skills of executive presence, you have the full package that you need to make your voice heard and have a bigger impact in the workplace. And when I guide you through the confidence building, I use the expansion method. My work is about helping you feel good about yourself in the process. I want you to emerge from my program not just feeling more confident and not just feeling like you know how to speak up effectively, but feeling like you have an empowered, healthy, self-compassionate relationship with yourself. If that is the type of transformation that appeals to you, I want to invite you to add yourself to the waitlist by clicking the link in the description box or in the show notes. Once you join the waitlist, you will be first to find out when the next cohort is enrolling. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye.